right, everyone, so for part 3, we are looking at isolated specimens. So what we have here is the stomach, and if we open up the stomach, you can see these folds inside of the stomach called rugae. All right, so again, these are the folds inside of the stomach. Now again, just to point out some landmarks or structures that we talked about earlier, this would be your pyloric valve or pyloric sphincter, okay? You can palpate that. If you look at the specimen, another specimen I have, you can certainly see how thick that pyloric sphincter is in this specimen. So in this model, we happen to have the esophagus connected to the stomach, and then again, we would lead into the small intestine, the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum. And again, we convey food into the first part of the duodenum via the pyloric valve. So here's my pyloric valve, all right? And this is the first part of the small intestine. Here is my duodenum, okay? And we have that nice curvature of the duodenum, and here is the pancreas, all right? So again, this globular-like tissue, glandular tissue, is our pancreas. And people, here is an isolated pancreas, and you can certainly see it's like globular in nature. Here's the tail, the head, the body, the tail of our pancreas. And this would be the gallbladder, okay, in this isolated specimen. And what we'll do is we will move over here and look at other specimens that we have. So again, if we focus on an accessory organ, because again, we just mentioned the pancreas and gallbladder, 2 of 3 of the accessory organs, if you will, of the digestive tract. Here is the posterior aspect of the liver. So this is quite a large liver, yes, hepatomegaly, right, is what this is representing for us. Here is my falciform ligament, all right? And I'm turning this liver around, and I just wanted to identify for you the other lobes of the liver that we talked about earlier. So this is that caudate lobe. It looks like a tail, okay, caudate. And then we have the quadrate lobe, and it looks really rectangular, or again, like a quadrilateral, okay? And so ultimately, those are the 4 lobes of the liver, so to speak. Now, what I'd like to point out in another specimen, another liver, would be that Porta Hepatis that we looked at earlier. So here are these major ducts, vessels associated with the liver. Here is where we would have the entry of the hepatic portal vein. That carries, remember, this is where the blood from all the other visceral organs drain into the liver, because the liver has first pass metabolism, first shot at everything. And then we also have the presence of an artery, okay, hepatic artery proper. So again, the hepatic portal vein, hepatic artery proper, and here is our common bile duct. So all 3 of these comprise the Porta Hepatis. And this would be, this is the gallbladder, which has basically been perforated, right? All right. And if we focus our attention on the isolated digestive tract, namely the small and large intestine, okay, in this specimen, there's some really neat features that I want to show you. So this is the mesentery, okay? So remember, the mesentery is ultimately visceral peritoneum that covered the surface of the organ and then met back up with each other, okay, the membranes on either side, right? So the visceral peritoneum, and now when it's not covering the surface of the organ, we actually call it the mesentery. So here's the mesentery, and of course we have vessels and nerves and lymphatics running through the mesentery. So it's more or less an anchorage system to prevent the intestines from twisting upon themselves and becoming occluded during digestion. Now, what's very interesting is I want to show you inside of the jejunum. So look at this. These are the plici circulares. These are those raised ridges in the first part of the small intestine. Again, the first part of the small intestine, well, I should say this. The first part of the small intestine was the duodenum. Technically, this is the second part of our small intestine, the jejunum, all right? So those raised ridges sit several millimeters high, okay? Now, if we go to the distal end of the small intestine, I want to show you what the plici circulares looks like when we open up the ileum. So we had the jejunum and we have the ileum. And you can see where those raised ridges just are not as prominent further along in the digestive tract, okay? So again, there are the plici circulares diminish in terms of their height as we travel through the digestive tract. Now we're going to enter into the large intestine, and here is my ileocecal valve, okay? Here's my ileocecal valve, and this would be my cecum, the first part of my large intestine, okay? So again, my cecum, and then once again, I have my ascending colon, my right colic flexure, all right, my transverse colon, the left colic flexure, and this would be the descending colon right here, and of course, here is my sigmoid colon, okay? So right over here, here's my S-shaped region of the colon, so my sigmoid colon, all right? And we will, I suppose, conclude, if you will, by just covering up our intestines with the omentum, my fat apron, right? Which is, again, a type of mesentery. One last thing, I suppose, as I'm mentioning this. If I'm lifting up the omentum and you see the transverse colon here, the transverse colon is anchored to the abdominal wall with this, the mesocolon, the mesentery of the colon. So this technically is mesocolon, and this is mesentery associated with the small intestine. So this is mesentery, and connected or anchoring the transverse colon to the posterior abdominal wall, here we have the mesocolon. All right, everyone, so that concludes the specimens that I'll show you today, and that's the end of part 3. Thank you so much.